Well, hello, ASEA. It's good to be with you this morning. This is Tyler Norton, founder and chairman of ASEA, and it's always a treat for me to be able to take a few minutes and share some thoughts on a 10 minutes with founders and executives, 10FX. I mentioned last time I did this is something we started a long, long time ago and discontinued, so it's fun to get back into sharing some ideas to help you start your day. I shared some thoughts the other day with the Ascent qualifiers, and I kind of want to piggyback on some of that. And my goal today was to talk about the notion of deliberate practice. There's a book that I've kind of been listening to and reading at the same time called Talent is Overrated. Another great book by in a similar vein is called Peak. And both these books kind of get at the notion that we over ascribe someone's experience and capacity to talent at times, or to being gifted. In one of these books that I've been reading, it talks about we're all gifted with what they call the gifted A, which is adaptability. And it points to the notion of how do you engage adaptability inside of yourself? In other words, improvement, changing, getting better at something. And as much as we'd like to give credit to just natural born talent, the truth is, and a lot of research shows, it's just not true. That extraordinary achievement isn't necessarily a function of expertise or IQ, or even kind of innovation isn't born of some creative, spontaneous moment where you're drawing upon some innate or natural talent. It's actually born of energy and effort. And there's a lot of really interesting research out there that really dispels the myth that talent is the X factor. It has way more to do with practice. Now, when I say practice, I don't want to get to the notion of naive practice being that I just keep doing the same thing over and over again. It actually has way more to do with the notion of purposeful practice, where there's a goal, there's focus, and there's feedback mechanisms that enable you to kind of push outside the boundaries of your comfort zone. Sometimes in my earlier career, I would have people come in and they would be telling me that, hey, I need to make a change in my career. I'm going to go to a different business. I've got 5 years in the business and I'm going to leave. And oftentimes I would say to some of them, actually, you don't have 5 years in the business. You have 1 year 5 times. Think about that for just a minute, because I think what happens is a naive practice, or let's call it imperfect practice. You've heard the maxim, practice makes perfect. What I learned early on from a mentor is that perfect practice makes perfect. Imperfect practice only makes practiced imperfection, meaning that a naive practice, just because I'm doing something and have experience, there's actually research that shows that achievement in performance can actually decline in some cases for people because they stop practicing the right way, or perfect practice. So the idea of purposeful practice really needs to have a clear goal. It needs to have a clear, alert sense of focus about what specific area you're trying to improve in. There needs to be feedback mechanisms, which is why I think network marketing, uplines, three-way calls, working with leaders that are helping you to grow your business can create those loops of feedback that can provide real-time data and information back on how your practice is going. And then frankly, you've got to take all of that and use it to push yourself out of a comfort zone. If you tend to do those things that you're most comfortable with all the time in growing your business, I can assure you, you're going to end up with kind of an imperfect practice model where you might be here with us for 5 years, but really have 1 year of experience 5 times. How do you compound that experience so that you actually get better, so that year one is building on year two is building on year one, year 3 on year 2, and so on and so forth, so that when you really say I have 5 years of experience, it's truly pointing to that. And that kind of purposeful practice means you need to zoom in on the areas that are both most uncomfortable for you, things that you may not do very well in building your business, and then just make it a very deliberate and conscious effort to practice them. The reason I bring this up is because I think there is a school, it's kind of like a curve of experience, like we call it a learning curve often. I think there's a school of experience that we ought to consider in making efforts to improve our ability and our achievement levels. And that has a lot to do with kind of a school of transactions, or the amount of times you do something. I mentioned last week to some folks, if you're just doing this a few times a week, it's tough to build the skill sets and the muscle memory and the ability to the point where it comes very naturally to you. And I think the idea would be to say, what area of your business needs the most attention as it relates to you achieving your goals? And get some outside feedback. If that's a hard question for you to answer, then reach out to some people around you and start to realize, okay, what is it that I need to really focus on and practice doing? I have a son that served a church mission for 2 years in Russia. And as you know, Russian is not an easy language. He was 18 years old, just graduated from high school and accepted a responsibility for 2 years in Russia. And when he got home 2 years later, by the way, he translated for their president of that particular mission. Within 9 months, he was like the going translator if they were in a meeting together. And how did he accomplish that in 9 months? And we sat and talked about it, and he practiced incessantly. He would take 3x5 cards with him out and around, and as he was walking and see a word somewhere that he didn't know or understand, he would write it down. And he did that, and then would keep those cards with him for several days in a row until he had that word mastered, whether it was the vocabulary or the pronunciation. It was a very focused and deliberate practice. And when he got back, we took a vacation together, and we were in Hawaii a few weeks after he had gotten home, and we were going on a snorkeling trip. And we went out on the boat together, and sure enough, we look over and he says, "Oh, that couple over there is speaking Russian." So I went over with him to introduce him because he had only been home a little while, and I wanted to hear him speak Russian. And as he was talking to the gentleman was from Los Angeles, and he asked me where my son was born. And I remember saying, "Well, he was born here." And he goes, "I know, but was he born in Russia before he came here?" And I said, "No, he's an American." He says, "I don't think I've ever heard anybody speak Russian quite like he does." Jacob's in his 4th year at Brigham Young University studying Russian, and really it is quite an example to me of deliberate practice. He focused on it incessantly until he became really good at it. And I can assure you, he was way outside of his comfort zone when he first got there. We need to think of our practice and our building our businesses that way. And we need to be thinking in terms of, what can I do to improve? Because imperfect practice just makes practice imperfection. We need to have clear goals, focus in on very deliberate practice areas, get a feedback mechanism through someone else that can help us and tell us if we're getting better. And then ultimately position ourselves forward by saying, okay, I'm going to push myself weekly out of my comfort zone in the form of key activities and really practice on them. We need to be a little less concerned about missing, so to speak. I've talked about my son shooting baskets every day out front. Practice means you're going to miss. Practice means you're going to miss some people that you were hoping to share this message with. I just want to challenge all of you to give some thought to, are you practicing naively without clear purpose, or is it purposeful practice, the kind of practice that's so deliberate and conscious that it really leads to improvement and year over year compounding, you getting better? So that's my message today on our little 10X kickoff for the day and for the week. I wish you all great success as you set out to do this, and wish you the very best as you make an effort to be more purposeful in your practice and what it is you need to get better at. Have a great day and have a great week, guys. Thanks.